Hi, I'm Vijay Anand. I'm the author of New Immigration Secrets. Today we have a very interesting guest. He's a veteran executive, CEO and founder of Subsystem, an information technology company that serves in the federal space. He's a visionary and entrepreneur. He's also served as the chief of staff in the governor's office in the state of Maryland. Please welcome Sam Malhotra. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Vijay. How are you?
Good, and how are you, sir? Welcome today.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful day in Washington D.C. and fall is in the air. The leaves are changing colors and crispness in the air. So it's a beautiful, beautiful day.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm from Maryland too, sir, and it's like amazing here. The sunlight is out here, and we're having a great day. And sir, if you can just give the audience a little bit brief about your background, so that they can hear from you and get some more information.
Okay, sure. So I am a serial entrepreneur, and this is my third company that I'm running now called Subsystem Technologies, and it's the longest running company that I've run for over 30 years. My very first business was a software development business. Uh, and I'm going back in the early 80s, where someone there was a magazine at that time called Success Magazine, and they had advertised for a programmer to help them finish up a software that they were developing, a PC-based software that they were developing for doctors' offices. So that was my first foray as a uh, as an independent contractor, where I incorporated a company and I ran everything through that. Then the second company, my father and I actually started. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, when this was pre-Blockbuster, and we had a video store that we started, and and then we grow it around the Beltway in the DC area to eight of them, and it was one of the fascinating journeys, part of the journey, I should say, that where folks were so taken by uh, seeing entertainment and movies in their own homes rather than going to a movie theater. It was fascinating time. So we sold that, and then I went back to my roots of being a technologist, and I started Subsystem Technologies back in 1987. And today it is a company that primarily does work for DoD in weapon systems. We we do engineering work for legacy and new weapon systems for the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy. I am happily married. I have two adult kids. My parents are with me, and so that's a little bit about me.
Wow, wow. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing that. And what's the drive behind all of this? Like, what drives you?
I think to me, if I were to very succinctly put it in a sentence or two, it would be that I want to make a difference. No matter what I'm engaged in, I want to make a difference. And to me, that's the driver.
Wow, wow. And what was your biggest dream when you got to the United States of America?
Yeah, that's a great question. Different people have different dreams, and they, I guess, manifest in very different forms. For me, I was 14 when my parents emigrated from India, and I have to say that even while I was in India, I loved this concept of exchanging you know, goods and or services to meet a need, right? So in other words, it's a perfect equation for business. I remember, I used to love collecting stamps from all over the world. And one day in school in India, I took my stamp collection, and there were kids who wanted to buy some of these stamps. It was the most beautiful thing for me. In other words, it was a beautiful exchange of goods and services that met their needs. So I that was the germination of this idea that I would like to be in business. And so when we came to this country from the very inception, that was something that I wanted to do. Uh, and even in the context of business, uh, looking at the world through this lens of business, it's all about making a difference and making a difference in people's lives, whether they are your employees or your customers or your service providers or your business partners.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. And what would we define as a failure? And did you ever have any setbacks to the process? Obviously, you should have, but I'm just asking just to understand.
Oh, where do I begin? Um, we, uh, I think for me, it was, when we first started the business, it was having this fear of failing, right? And the fascinating thing for me, at least, has been that my biggest fears are usually they manifest themselves. And so very early on, we ran out of cash, and it was mismanagement on my part on not managing the cash flow to make payroll. It was a very, very uh, stressful and time that was full of guilt and time that was full of dejection and disappointment, running out of cash, to make payroll. Now, businesses don't run out of business because they don't have any business. It's purely because they run out of cash. And that was my very first failure. And since then, I have been very, very careful in cash management. I mean, even in my company today, we have a whole process for treasury management just so that we never, ever run into that again. So that was the biggest thing that I remember for failure. But I learned a big deal from it. Now, over the course of many, many years, you win many opportunities that takes your spirit even higher. And there are times when you think you were going to win a deal and you lose them. Uh, but I will tell you that nothing compares to what I went through in this one thought that I will not be able to make payroll to people who depended on me uh, and the senior team to feed their families, and that was something that I just couldn't live with. But
Right.
since then, it's been yeah. Since then, we made sure that we never ever run into that again.
Wow. But during that time, what were the three biggest lessons that you kind of observed and learned from your own journey? Will you be able to share that?
Sure. I think one of the biggest fallacies of owning a business or running a business or being an entrepreneur is that it's all about you, right? All about myself or all about the one. But that's not the case, right? And so my learning in all of that has been that uh, uh, that you can't make it about yourself. And let me ask, give me that question in another way today.
Right. I mean, during those tough times when you said that you ran out of cash and it was so horrible to kind of like faced the payroll situation, you made ends meet, somehow you got the courage back on track and you did it. What was the process behind that went in your brain that kind of helped you to mitigate that kind of a tough situation, become the entrepreneur
right,
that you are today?
right, right. So I was on the right track. So you can't first of all take things personally, right? I mean, even you do make a mistake, you need to bounce back and keep things moving forward because you have so many people that are depending on you, especially employees. So I remember getting into meditation at that time, and I've continued over all these years to meditate very deeply. That's one. The second thing is that if you're going to build something of value, something of uh, meaningful to the world, then you can't do it alone. The fact that I was managing cash on my own, was the wrong thing. It has to be a team effort. And running an enterprise does not mean that, especially when you're the founder, does not mean that only you get to see the numbers. The team needs to see the numbers because they too have a vested interest. And that was my biggest learning. So now, everything that we do it as a team. And I'm very careful on who I invite to be on the team. I mean, you have to bring people in that have the same value systems like you do. You want to make sure they have the same integrity like you do. And above all, they have the same values that you do.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, sir, for explaining that. And what would be an advice that you could give a new immigrant to this country?
Advice to a new immigrant.
Someone who just moved to the
Well,
United States and they want to make it big.
yeah. So the first is that I think to adapt to a new setting, to a new country, I think that's very, very important, right? It is absolutely important. Your belief systems that were built from a different country, those sometimes may not work for you in, uh, uh, in the setting that we have here in the U.S., right? So that's number one. It's to adapt. Number two is to study. No matter what they are going to do or new immigrants are going to do, uh, they need to really study. Uh, and I don't mean academically, I mean focusing on what they'd like to do, right? Whether it is finances, whether it's a career, whether it's family, whatever it is, they need to focus on it in ways like they couldn't focus in wherever, they came from. Now, in my case, I remember that's the best example that I can give is that I read a lot of books, right? It gave me an opportunity to embed myself in a way of thinking which was so far away and different with what I grew up with. And that to me is the key, is the knowledge of whether it's going to be, a success in entrepreneurship or a career, whatever career it is to understand what people before me did to be successful and learning from their mistakes and learning from what they did, is probably the biggest thing that I would say, or the biggest advice that I can give.
Wow. Sir, and what are the common mistakes, like a couple of those that new immigrants do according to you? That if they didn't do that, they have a great
Yeah,
opportunity to make progress in a faster pace.
that's a very interesting question because I think we as immigrants we come in and we like to stick within our own community, right? What made this nation, our nation, so magnificent is that we all came from wherever we came from and we assimilated, right? this notion of little Italy, little India, little Cuba, it's great. It's great. But if we don't assimilate, then we get left behind. And I would strongly recommend to whoever is going to listen or read to this is that we need to expand our networks, expand our friendships, not just within our own community, but other communities. And that's what makes this country so great. It's an experiment that has been, ongoing for what 230 some odd years, and and I think that's what made it great. No other country allows you to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. That's why this is the greatest country on the globe right now. And regarding the books, you said it's very interesting. You kept reading books. Like, what would be like a couple of books that you would recommend someone who's starting out in their personal development journey?
Yeah. To me, the 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 mother of all of books is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That one book really set me on a course in my life that I am very grateful for. Someone I don't even now recall who recommended it, but they did, and I was fortunate enough to heed their advice and pick it up. And that book totally changed my outlook on life. So Think and Grow Rich. I'm reading a current book which is fascinating. It's called You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he's a modern day mystic, neuroscientist. I mean, fascinating, fascinating how he weaves science into this law of attraction, and how the fusion of two come together. A fascinating book. You're a Tony Robbins fan, I think, as well. So Awaken the Giant Within was a good book for me. Uh, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. It's a very short treatise on how our uh, outer world is a direct reflection of what's happening inside our minds. So our thinking is what manifests in our physical world. And this one book, and I will tell you, it really made me angry, and I will tell you why. At the time I had picked up this book was many years ago. My business wasn't going too well, and after I read this book, I kept thinking to myself, what is it that I am thinking that my outer world, which I'm not very happy with, is a direct reflection of what I'm thinking. And the moment I started to shift that thinking, my outer world, my business, my family life, my personal relationships, they all started to get better. It's a powerful book. It's probably less than 50, maybe 75 pages, no more than that, but a fantastic book. Then the last book that I would highly recommend is a book on strategy. It's called Winning in Fast Times. He's a retired colonel, John Warden III, and he was the architect of the Gulf War and the strategy behind that. Fascinating book. If you love strategy, which if you're an entrepreneur and if you're in business or even in life, you need a strategy. Very fascinating methodology on how to create strategy. So those are my top books that I have on my bookshelf, and a lot of times I do go back to them because I'll open a page someplace and I'll start reading, and I walk away with a golden nugget again. And I mean, I have other books, but I would say that this is the top four or five books that I keep going back to.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing that. And if our audience would like to reach out to you, where can they find you, sir?
You can certainly look at LinkedIn. I'm at Sam Malhotra, Malhotra. You can do that, or you can also send me an email. I'm at subsystem, subsystem.com. So you can certainly reach out to me that way as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, sir. Once again, thank you very much, sir. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you today, and thank you for sharing all the information and your journey in the past. I really appreciate your time, and you have a wonderful day, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Bye now.
Bye.